All right. So, welcome to the first episode of Project Strengthcast. All right, we're going to try to keep it as censored as possible.
Yes. If you would like to sponsor us right now, that would be the best move because at some point we will get cancelled. So you will get some coverage. Good coverage we cannot guarantee, but
Guarantee.
coverage. Yeah,
Coverage
right,
for sure.
coverage, right?
Publicity is publicity. So, yeah.
Exactly. As long as they spell your names right, it's all good, right? That's why I changed my username. Like everyone thought I was like an Italian DJ, you know?
J Triesto. Who's J Triesto? But yeah, in
And
all seriousness, though, like we just came here because we wanted to kind of talk about topics just in strength science that we felt, especially like in the Indian space, it's not talked about as often. So yeah, so he's here on his, on his phone. He's just standing, and I'm here, and we're going to be talking about adaptations today, mostly adaptations
yeah,
and the SRA curve.
yeah.
So yeah, he's going to do,
And like
yeah,
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the most important things that we discussed when we wanted to start this was like, yes, we will be talking, but you also want to bring guys that we know in common, right? That are like probably at the highest level in the sport. Like we know guys from around the world who really do want to speak to people here, right? Like Norman, for example, who I like mentor under, guy who really wants to talk to the Indian audience. He's like, there's a lot of potential here, right? You'll have other coaches who like we have guys that are focused on rehab because like again we might not be the experts in the field at the moment, right? We want to bring the best to you guys so that you guys can have the best opportunity to learn from this thing, right? We
just to
want
make the
someone to always walk
average
away with
person a
something.
little bit more smarter in this space, like
Yeah,
literally.
exactly, right. Because like I'll again go back to the thing I learned from Norman is like I think once you learn first principles and to learn how to think, that's when your like programming becomes interesting for you. Because Norm once told me something very important was like coaches are not afraid of like I think fear comes when something that used to work stops working, and now you don't know what to do, right? So like I think that's the most important thing when we bring people that are like injury management or like programming specific or just like GPP based strength and conditioning coaches. Like these things are for us to learn, but you guys to also get like ample amount of value from.
True, that's true. And like
Right?
ultimately, like initially when we were talking about creating this, another thing that I kind of thought was if we just the thing is we it's like very prevalent that we have a problem with coaches who don't really know as much as they should, or just like complete scam coaches in India. And the thing is, you can shame people as much as you want, but they're not going to stop existing. So a thing that we could do on our part is to just make the average person a little bit smarter to the point where
Yeah.
they're able to like recognize if a coach is a real coach or just
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
And the reality is both of us will admit to this that we don't have all the answers, right?
yeah,
But we want to
true.
create a space where like questions can be raised because like I always tell people I get mentored for biomechanics and I get mentored for like programming related aspects. I'm still learning. We just want to share this with people, right? It's not that we have all the answers. We just want to create an environment where questions can be answered.
Absolutely, that's what I'm talking about. All right,
So like
so
the
to get
adaptation
into
thing, right?
let's get into the main thing. All right, to begin, I just want to like talk about like kind of the two-faced model that a lot of people in India, not India, but like just actually yeah, in India, I've seen this personally. A lot of people talking about this. First thing, if you know what an adaptation is, you're already better than most of the people here.
Yeah.
And after that, one other thing that we wanted to discuss about is that a lot of people only believe adaptations are muscular or neural. So kind of just want to talk about that as well. How
Yeah.
that's not entirely true. There's a lot of different parts of it which you are not currently exploiting, which you could be doing to make
Yeah.
programs a lot better. How the
Yeah.
SRA curve works, how every single part has its own timeline, so they don't all
Yeah.
follow the same curve. So yeah, we're just going to be
Uh,
talking about all of that.
I'd say like just to throw this word out, right? Like I think again, not my thought process again, stuff that I learned from Norman. First principles, right? When someone hears the word adaptations, like with a program, everyone will say like, "Oh, we want to create adaptations," right? Right. And what I tend to think about that is like adaptations is contextual. It can be both positive and negative adaptations, right? You can write a dog shit program and can create negative adaptations. You
True.
can write um, a decent program, create positive adaptations. And sometimes you'll kind of like have this gray zone where you come from a horrible program into a bit more structured program, and then you may see like rapid growth all of a sudden. And that could either be adaptations, or that could just be like a tapering effect from all the crap that you were doing, right? So like I would just define adaptations as an exposure to something create a change in the human system, right? And
Absolutely.
changes can be positive or negative. Is that how you would approach it as well?
Yeah, that makes sense because so when I explain people about how an adaptation works, I just basically tell them this. It's like you just look at it from a survival standpoint. I don't even mean to say this from like a strength science perspective. Anything that you give, the reason why the like we survive as a human race is because we are of our ability to adapt to the circumstances, to make ourselves change for better or for worse on the basis of the circumstances that we are under. And the only goal that we have with like programming and thinking about adaptations with regards to programming is to kind of just make sure that the circumstances we put our body under are kind of
Yeah.
uh, they just systemized to produce the kind of adaptations that we want. And again, as Jay
Yeah.
said, if you don't take care of that, or if you could say like one of the primary things one of the things like he showed me from, like, can I mention that, like, he showed me that guy with the doing multiple maxes, no?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
you'll have situations where like a guy will do like multiple like max out attempts and then fail multiple times, and then you're just sitting there wondering, is that the easiest way to kind of approach this?
exactly. And you see these types of things happen, and then you wonder that, oh wait, is this how programming is meant to be? But this is kind of what we talk about when we speak of negative adaptation. So your body eventually
Yeah,
just it starts
yeah,
to kind of change in a way which is not optimal or what we want for it to change to.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's the difference between positive and negative adaptation. That's kind of how I approach it when I explain it to people. Just from that survival standpoint, I find that it helps people understand it like way better. Um, because like I've tried to explain adaptations from a strength perspective directly, and like a lot of people are
yeah.
like, "What?"
And I just think like if we got if like again all of the guys I've learned from just say if you can't dumb it down, right, you need to rethink your understanding of it. I just tell people there's something of a stress imposed when we program for someone, and that creates a result in someone, right?
True.
If the stress or the stimulus provided is balanced enough, there's a positive trend. If it is too little or like too much, right, the system can't adapt to it in a positive way and it starts to break down, right? The human system is just we do something to it and has the ability, like you said, to grow off of something, right?
Yep.
So we want to find an environment in a program. When you're writing a week of training, you are just trying to create an environment where something allows for positive growth in the outcome that we want. That's it. That's how I look at like programming. That's why the whole thing about like the golden microcycle in powerlifting is right.
Hmm.
You're just like you'll have like this 1 week of structured stress, right? And like, maybe we may be I may be digressing, feel free to cut me off, but like when someone says like primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, these kind of days, it is just an imposition of stress at
Stress.
different locations of a week to get us an outcome on a certain day, right? It's largely how I just like voice it to people.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of the reason why you see, like a lot of people they get confused as to like you see a lot of people from outside, especially on these sorts of longer form content, talk about how secondary days kind of feed into the primary days, how the first week
Yeah,
kind of feeds into the second week, and like this is how a macro cycle kind of runs. Everything feeds into each other, and that's kind of why it matters for you not to overshoot, and why we talk
yeah.
about that so much. The SRA curve, especially all of that. So yeah, that makes total sense. this is
No, and
this is nice.
yeah, no, exactly right. Like it's just like spitballing ideas. Just like
That's what.
I think, I'll kind of give like Sune is someone we both know in common,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the first block we ran, and like something I was telling him, and like something like again, this goes to Norman, like working with him, learning from him. I tell people the fact that if a certain week shows up, right, it's not because you just wanted to show up. It's because something prior to that,
Made
the
it.
stimulus prior to that allowed for it,
Hmm.
right? So like when I was looking at like Sune's program, we just wanted to see where his red line would be, right? And after his week 3 stimulus, week 4 performed like really well, right? It was insanely well. Then week 5, we kind of
Went
like
like that.
mirrored the same stimulus and it dipped,
Hmm.
right? So like getting into like a little bit more in depth on the programming elements, I would just say I now know where his average intensity, his peak intensity, like for his like current structure of program should be, what frequency we can kind of manipulate, where I saw like dips that we can kind of cover. So like I just think I want people to kind of think about like the choice to do something on week two is a byproduct of week one. All right. Like what happens today is a result of something imposed prior to this. So that stimulus is allowing me to express the day.
I
All right.
absolutely.
And like you said, if you don't push that secondary day, right, where there's that stimulus, then the body is too understimulated and it will just detrain, because we want to kind of remember holding on to these adaptations is costly and the
It is.
system is not. I read it somewhere, I forget, I think it was in an anthropology book. The system is survive, like the human system is designed to survive and not thrive. If
That's
there's
true.
an easier
It
way,
always moves
we just
towards
do that.
entropy, and we just have to do whatever
Yeah,
we can to make sure that it's still
in that
functioning
kind
as
of a
we would
situation.
want it to. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like even like if I could give an example like this, even with one of my guys, his name is Vamshi. So he's the same guy that I was telling you about. Like he works a lot and he
Yeah,
just has a very busy schedule. So initially, it took me like a while to understand kind of what his body is able to handle in terms of intensity when it comes to like to the entire block. And it was similar to what you said, but the trend was kind of weird. So he used to do 3 week programs, and then he used to overshoot sometimes. So that used to. Okay, this is like a side note. Okay, I'm going to track off just a little bit, but like with him, this is something I want to tell people about as well. When you like keep overshooting in like let's say like week 2 and week 3s now, you're going to be interrupting the data collection process a lot, and
yeah,
that's going to just extend this time to do what could have just taken 5 weeks. Like this happened with him as
yeah,
well. I had to go through multiple blocks to get the data of how much he can handle in a block for something that I could like that could have been done within like 5 weeks itself.
yeah,
And it took me a while to like help him understand like auto regulation and how to actually like choose weights on the basis of that. We're doing better now, but yeah, this is like something like a sidetrack that I just wanted to add. Like
yeah,
when
yeah,
we say don't overshoot, it's not just like theek hai, you're going to like enjoy yourself or you're going to like perform worse at the end of the week. It's also going to interrupt something for your coach, which is going to just cost you more in the long run. You're going to have to spend more time doing what you did not need to.
yeah. And I would say something here is like this is something, again, I was taught by like two guys who I learned from, two separate guys. Again, I cite these guys off because like these aren't my ideas, right? I
Yeah.
want credit where credit due, right? You kind of have to like almost educate your like athletes. A smarter athlete is a more like compliant athlete. I feel like once you know what's right and wrong, it becomes like an easier choice to make the right thing, right? So like sometimes a person will think if the absolute load, right, which is the weight on the bar goes up, then like I'm getting stronger.
I'm getting
But
stronger.
if
Yeah.
you, for example, exactly, like a guy will think, man, I hit this 105 last week for like a single. This week I hit 110, but the 105 last week was hit at like RP 6. 110 was like at RP 10. You're like, okay, you got more kind of absolute load, as in the weight in the bar.
But the
But
E1
if you look
hasn't
at trends
hasn't
like
really
E1R,
progressed. Yeah.
Exactly, right? That 105 at 6 at RPE 6 is a far better outcome for us than that 110. So again, we may be drifting off like here, but I want to say this thing is like sometimes I've noticed like a guy will push a block and they'll tell me, yeah, dude, my guy like hit this triple and then they hit this single at this triple, and you'll see, oh, dude, this person didn't squat to depth. They're ramping their deadlifts and the bench pause like left, right? The building, right? So
Yeah.
the reality is, are you that strong, right, compared to the standards? Because if you don't lift to powerlifting standards, fine, right? Then
I mean,
say la
that's
vie,
good for
whatever.
having a personal goal. Personally, I can lift this much,
Yeah,
but obviously, you won't be able to express that as well on comp,
yeah,
in
yeah.
comp.
Yeah. And the reality is like my boxing coach used to tell me, like a lazy jab gets you caught, right? It gets you caught in like practice. It gets you caught in a match, right? So you want to correct that everywhere. See, I want to throw a caveat here. Like I've seen Adam Peeler give some great examples of situations. Even forget his name. Richard from like New Zealand. These guys sometimes, when people have a lot of hip scar tissue or things like that, they will sometimes ask them to squat a bit higher, just at parallel kind of depth. because it's not something they can sustain. That depth kind of situation is not something they can sustain, right? There are like examples of things like that where like
Yeah,
there
I
is a
saw a case
caveat.
study of, I don't know if it was his or, but it was a girl. She went to Worlds and he was doing a case study on her, that how she, like, he controversially made her not squat to depth all the way up to Worlds, and then just like, I think they added it during the peak, and it showed up pretty well.
Pretty well, no? Yeah. So there are always like exceptions to this thing, right? But if you're entire like, but one thing I was noticing with Adam is like when he was telling people to do things like the bell squat, yeah, they were hitting depth, all right? They were doing a lot of things like that. So, um, what I've kind of understood is like sometimes people force load, all right?
True.
They will just add weight, and you can see through the weeks like the first week you hit depth, second week somewhere there, third week your lockout's not there. Like, do you need this? Is
True.
that stimulus in your program actually making you stronger?
Probably
Right.
not.
All
Yeah.
right. So like I think when we're trying to think of adaptations, right? One of the things that I want to talk about, like I learned from the guys in Performotion, like how important it is. Like you said, like in the beginning, like strength and hypertrophy is the only adaptations people think of, right?
Yeah.
But like fundamental things like cardiovascular adaptations, like powerlifters are athletes, dog. Like athletes required to be have a baseline of athleticism, right? And one of those things is like cardiovascular requirements.
That's true. That's
Right?
true. Like, this is something I've noticed on bench with some people who, like, who would benefit with having their breath in place throughout the set.
Uh,
They just gas out within 3 reps,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's like an issue that needs to be worked on, and that is also something that you can adapt to make better.
yeah. Because this is why, like, okay, like there are reasons why I'll see someone like a track and field athlete come into powerlifting and just kill everyone, right? Back in the day, Kevin Oak was like a high level sprinter, came into powerlifting, like crushed it. Athletes will have a general higher, like especially sprinters, high level rate of force development. Like they can just
Hmm.
they're explosive in nature, but they'll also have that cardiovascular capacity. They'll have these aspects of because we want to think an athlete is complete when they're healthy and have like a high baseline of athleticism. Then all you have to do is like program them,
Exactly.
right? But if someone has like crappy, like they're extremely injured and they are extremely like lacking in physical qualities, right? You're like, dude, just getting you uninjured will help you move better and lift more. Just
That's
getting
true.
you a healthier heart will help you do more work and help you lift more. All right.
100%.
So, like,
100%.
again, like, without digressing too much, I'm sure, like, when we have Norman on, we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
But the thing about, like, if you're programming for an athlete, is it a competence based programming approach? Is it a capacity based programming approach? Or is it a performance? Like if it's competency, someone can't even do the squat, bench, and deadlift properly. Well, just programming to make them do that thing properly, right? That stimulus will make them adapt and get stronger. They can move well, but they can't.
Hmm.
They don't have the capacity to sustain it. Just building local capacity while building movement competence, right? Teaching them to move better while getting them a healthier heart, making sure accessories are pushed. That just makes sure that well they know how to move and they have the muscle mass and heart health to actually do the work, and they just get stronger because of that. And when you get some high level crazy psycho strong guy where like they know how to squat, bench, and deadlift, they have immensely good heart health, they have really good like muscle mass and mobility, then you're just trying to peak performance. You're just trying to think about performance at the highest level. Like when you look at something like Agatha and
Hmm.
what do you call Austin Perkins, like that 6x SPD, 7 SPD thing that
Yeah.
they have, they're just generally developed. They're at the cusp of things.
Obviously, that's what. And this, like, this whole thing also just kind of makes sense of what we were talking about earlier. Why, like, you need to understand what you're kind of going to be chasing when you're creating the
Yeah.
program. So, like, what sort of adaptation? Not everybody needs to, like. So not everybody needs like the same thing at the same time, as he said.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of people who literally don't know how to move properly, and you need to kind of make sure that they're able to do that before you
Yeah.
push them on the skill, because you see a lot of people who are unable to. So with Sune, for example, he needed tempos which he did not
Yeah.
initially have, and like
Yeah.
pushing him on his previous form initially is something that eventually it already did, and it eventually would have kind of led him to be injured. And
Injured.
that is something which is, you could see like with a lot of people where they don't know how to move, and then if you keep pushing
Yeah.
them and kind of reinforcing the bad form that they already have without programming for
Yeah.
adaptations, improving their movement quality, it's just going to end in a bad way.
Yeah, and here I'm just gonna throw up a caveat of things where like
Yeah.
I want someone listening to this to actually think, right? Because again, shout out to Norman because the most of our mentorship was just teaching me how to think, right? So I just thought about this one thing where no movement is inherently dangerous, right? But if we move a certain way, we have the ability to spread out load across more muscle tissue, right? We can spread it out across more joints, right? Again, going back to Sunay's example, because he didn't have an understanding of how to move in the most efficient, I'd say, for lack of better term, and load distributing approach, right? His quads, glutes, and everything was getting equally loaded, right? His movement strategy relied on one joint heavily, right? He would just shoot into his knees. So the thing is, did he get hurt on day one? No. Did he get hurt on day two, day three, day four? Probably not. But because you're so reliant on one tissue strategy, one movement strategy, one single joint, so much emphasis.
Over time, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you don't spread that load. Like for example, like I have a guy who just joined. He's very wide stance squatting, right? The ton of abduction bias, and he sits into his hip a lot, right? Is he strong as an ox? Yes, he is, right? But should knee flexion still be a part of squatting? Yes, you want to have strong enough quads, right? Quad strength has been shown to be like Jake Tara's best example for this. Like if you guys want to study on tendon health, Jake is the absolute man, right? A lot of times people get like tendon issues. Why? Well, one could be poor movement pattern and like just poor shitty programming, right? But the other could be the fact is that they just don't have strong enough quads, right?
True.
And how long can you sit back into your hips? How much of like that strategy can you use? Because you don't see a lot of that at the top level of powerlifting. They're just well-rounded muscular humans.
That's true. That's true. You can't really replicate exactly what they're doing
Yeah,
as well. Similar
yeah,
reasons again. You're not really built the same, or you could say you're not really going to be moving the same right now as well.
yeah. And this is where like if we think about it, the word adaptation, right? If you're programmed, like I'll just throw this out there again. I am an idiot still learning how to be understand the larger picture, right?
Aren't we all?
Like I'll admit to that thing, but I would say like sometimes when a guy comes in and you look at their accessory work, all right, their list of accessory exercises, you can kind of clearly tell, oh, there's no thought process put into this thing, right?
Yeah.
Because okay, squat, bench, and deadlift are very hyper specific movements, right? That specific movement pattern will create specific adaptations. You shift the pendulum too far towards that set of adaptations, you're gonna be very limited in terms of the window of movement that you have. All right. Like the accessories are not built just for hypertrophy basis.
Exactly. True.
They are built like we can think of so many reasons, right? They're built to, well, one is hypertrophy, two could be
Sort of a
to,
reversal, like
yeah,
you said, for the bench movement especially.
yeah, I will tell you I'll mention that thing hypertrophy is like okay we just want to build more muscle mass get him on a machine and press it for bench, right? But like then we want to kind of think okay if that person is injured at the moment, like Dylan Johnson had like a great example. He tweaked I think his adductor or like quads or something, I forget what it is, but he was like man I couldn't squat, so like my accessories I kind of still gave them the stimulus required. So like the musculature, the muscles still had the stimulus to create positive adaptations. I'm sure when he unracked the bar and he felt it on his spine on the first week, that axial loading, the spinal loading, maybe they had a different way to do that thing, right? But that may be the one thing he may be alien to. But because he was still training his quads pretty heavily, they still had enough muscle mass, right? So I think accessories can build muscle, replicate a movement if you're injured. But I think the most underlooked thing is the thing you mentioned, like it should like think of the human system as here, right? Too much specific work means you just become like really narrow towards this side, right? And the margin for error is minimal there, all
You need
right?
to kind of do something to reverse that in some sense.
Exactly. And this is where we come into the principle of specificity and variability, right? SPD work is going to hyper specify like a lot of performance based stuff, right? Like specificity, we think about as driving performance. We are doing the specific task to drive performance. Variability, I would say, is like to look at general health, right? Like think of variability as the base, specificity as the pyramid you can build on it, right? The same the Burj Khalifa, right? You need like a wide ass base, dude. Right? Look at the pyramids in Egypt, like in Egypt. You need a wide base to build high,
True.
right? So, and I would say, for example, like I think adaptations. When we kind of get to this word, people think muscular, and they think of like what do you call it, neurological in terms of strength
Yeah.
expression,
And
but I think movement.
yeah, absolutely. That's true. Like accessories, like one other point, I feel like this is like something that I've kind of been experimenting with in the past few weeks. I feel like you could also add accessories as primers, something like a tech primer.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Like just expand on that. Like I think that's a
yeah.
very useful point. Just go
So
on it. Yeah.
yeah, so something like a you could say if somebody is unable to perform an entire day, or you can see it clearly affecting them negatively, but you still need something of a technique primer before their primary movement. For example, for squats, you could put in something like a goblet squat. For example, I like to use that, and that helps a lot with
Yeah.
priming that technique, just bringing it out, and it's not really fatiguing to the point where it's going to affect the systemic fatigue is
Yep.
going to affect you in the main lift. So like little things like this, wherein you're able to prime the technique so that it shows up better, just things that you're able to optimize with, and there are
Yep.
very little things that you can play around with. So for example, if you don't think of it this way, if you just think that okay, I need a technique primer for somebody before their primary day, and you're forced to add another whole squad day, that's going to kind of set them off path a little bit, especially if there's something like a busy person. Like I've been working with a few people who are very busy, like they're just
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that, but like it's been a little hard. They've been skipping days here and there, so I can't possibly add another day. But we still need some sort of a primer movement. So this is something that like I came up with. I thought that this could kind of work better. Still
Yeah.
experimenting with it, but honestly, I feel like yeah, there's a lot of experimenting
Yeah.
involved when we're doing this sort of programming. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is just what I think.
It's like agile periodization kind of an approach,
Hmm.
right? For like programming. I'll say like one of the simplest examples I've seen like a lot of good coaches give is, say a guy has a tertiary bench day required before like a primary session, right? Uh, they've tried to beef up the secondary day, but that's just too
Hmm.
much work and they can't handle it that day. See, so if that's just for people listening, like a secondary day can be on like a, let's say, Monday, and their primary is, let's say, on Friday or something. And this person can only do this movement on these 2 days. They don't have the luxury of like, kind of moving these things back and forth, right? So if you increase, if the stimulus on Monday is too little, right? What happens is that, okay, I think before that we'll kind of just jump on what like an SRAI curve is, because I think then people get like a bit more like an
Yeah, that
understanding
makes
of,
sense. Well, I initially like
right?
before that I want to talk about like neural adaptations.
Yeah,
So I mean, people hear neural adaptations, they don't really know what it means. They're like, so like you mentioned, the sprinter or somebody they're coming into, they have like
yeah,
very good rate coding.
yeah,
That's basically like how fast you're able to fire the motor units,
yeah,
and also the recruitment itself. Like
yeah,
basically, you see a lot of smaller dudes, and you're like, how the fuck is he lifting so much when he's this small? He's literally just more efficient. Like his brain and his nervous
yeah.
system is just more efficient at doing what it does.
Yeah.
That's basically what neural adaptations are. I wanted to explain this because I've seen this to be like a confusing thing. Like people know what they
Yeah,
mean, but
the brain is like, well, I know how to do this really well. All right. It's
exactly.
just like, well, I can. So I would say like neural adaptations. One thing is like the brain just says, I can use everything available to me right now really well. Right. And then you just move really well as a result of that thing. You coordinate the movement well. You can
Hmm.
synchronize everything well, like your hips, knees, everything stays in place. Right. So like it's just brain does that well.
You have better co-activation also, things like that, where you're just
Yeah.
able to become way more efficient with what you do. Your brain is able to like choose way better on what motor units to kind of utilize, and then how fast
Yeah.
they actually fire after that. And
Yeah.
these adaptations, they happen over time, but again, this is like one of the reasons why you see a lot of smaller dudes lifting a shit ton. They're literally just more efficient with what
Efficient.
they
Yeah.
have right now. And this is
And,
also like one of the reasons you're saying something.
no, I was just gonna say like these adaptations can happen together. You can have neural like like hypertrophy specific adaptation. The
uh,
program is catering to all of these things at the same time and balancing them out.
Exactly, that's what. So like they don't really happen on the same timeline. We're going to get into that with the SRA
Yeah,
curve. But like I just
yeah,
like a little point before that. This is like one of the main reasons I've spoken on this before also on one of my videos. I don't remember. This is one of the reasons why you see a lot of newbies. They come into it and then they spend like 5 to 7 weeks on like a structured program and they genuinely grow quite stronger. But you
yeah,
don't see any visible muscle growth. You don't really see any like physical differences. The only like major adaptation that happens during that time frame is that they're quite literally just they're able to use what they have way better. Like they're just able to
yeah,
communicate better with their own body, if that makes sense.
yeah. And I tell people this thing like this is not specific to powerlifting. This is like a
Hmm.
first principle thing. Like you practice guitar like once And by the second time, you'll have some familiarity. You throw a
Hmm.
punch once in boxing, you'll have some familiarity with the skill. This is how skills, the body just learns to coordinate itself. That's it.
That's true. That's true. Exactly.
I'm just going to ask you, like the window, the view that SBD is a skill is sometimes like kind of left out the window, no? Like
Yeah,
there is a
exactly. Like
skill
you don't see
component.
many people saying that, but it is obviously a skill.
Yeah, you're expressing something, right?
Obviously, and the fact that you need to that you need to program for improvement of movement quality by
Yeah,
itself should prove that it is a skill, because you need to
yeah,
improve your efficiency in that, you need to improve the way that you
yeah.
perform in it.
It's like people ask me like, dude, why do you give so many people tempo deadlifts? I'm like, it's
Hmm.
very rare you find someone with good foot pressure on deadlifting, right? Most people just yank the bar off the floor, right? And then like I had a guy join recently. He said, "Oh, so now I feel my legs and not my spine." I'm like, well, you know, the benefit of moving more efficiently like that is that you'll have more energy and bandwidth for the other things, right? Controversial take. I know probably like some people are like hate on this thing. Sometimes when a person moves better, like I know guys with shit technique that can lift a lot of weight, but I think when someone moves a bit better, they just open up more bandwidth for other things that they can do.
That's true. That makes sense. Yeah.
Sometimes an RP just ramps up
Yeah.
for a guy because they just suck at moving.
That's true. That's true. And oh yeah, yeah. So this just popped into my head as well. So like regarding this also, another like quick little fact. You know, you see a lot of lifters at like the top. Shell is like one of the biggest examples of this. You look at him do
Yeah.
192.5 at RP7 at Sheffield. He did this, and then he
Dude,
increases
it's
it
so easy.
2.5. Yeah, that's what. And it increases it at 2.5, and then it just doesn't move. And
Yeah.
I feel like the one of the reasons is because at a point you get efficient enough that you can
Yeah.
lift very close to your max at a pretty comfortable level, and then
Yeah.
like immediately you just can't lift anymore.
Yep.
And the
Because
reverse is
that
also
struggle
true.
isn't there. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
like you're so right. I forget if it was Worlds or Sheffields, but I think 192, 195, 197.5. I was like, when I saw 192.5, I was like, man, this guy's gonna bench 210. Holy shit, 197.5 stapled him.
yeah, that's what.
But like, we want to throw out, like, let's just kind of talk about like the SRA curve and like order of operation. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, would you want to
So
jump in first?
So for the people who, let's just take it from the beginning. Let's not assume anything. The SRA curve, it basically talks about what actually adaptations are, how they happen. It's also called the super compensation curve for anybody like who's kind of new here. Stimulus, recovery, adaptation. That's kind of how it occurs. So as Jay said, you kind of need a stimulus to kind of bring about adaptation, and the gap between both of them will be your recovery window. So for example, something like a neural adaptation, the recovery window is not really too long. It can be like few hours to maybe like 1 or 2 days, but to actually express it, it could take a few weeks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people like, okay, this is a model of thought, like SRA curve, like gas fitness fatigue models. These are all like models of thought to kind of give us an understanding. They are not Bible gospel truths, but they give us a window to kind of view a problem, right? We speak on this SRA thing because then you can understand
give us
why
kind
does
of an
primary,
anchor.
secondary, tertiary, right? You kind of understand the why, right? I tell people, well, there's a stimulus, the thing given, there is a recovery, there is an adaptation, and then there is involution or detraining, right? And I tell people the most important thing we need to understand is there's an order of operation, right? Stimulus comes first. You don't adapt before you recover,
True.
right? So, like, if you think about it, if your secondary day is like on a Monday and your primary is on a Wednesday, right? Because God forbid you have to train like that, right? If on primary day you come feeling beat up, right? Like your joints hurt, like everything hurts. The stimulus on Monday, you've kind of and you okay, and you see, okay, sometimes you can come in feeling a little rough, but you perform really well. Like, but something we notice is that while you have this Monday, Wednesday shift, you don't really feel strong on Wednesdays. You feel like crap on Wednesdays, right? Um, you kind of want to kind of look at the fact that if one of the indications is like the tissues hurt, the joints are still sore, that stimulus on Monday is too strong, right? So
Yeah.
you have you're still in that recovery element and you haven't adapted. Like, so order of operation means we give a stimulus first. The next obligation for the body is not to grow, but to recover back to baseline, right? And then once it's recovered, then it can grow. But the
That
thing
makes
about
sense.
that growth is it needs another stimulus to hold the growth,
Hmm.
because SRAI is involution, or involution just means detraining, meaning that, well, you've gone through this thing and your body is like, well, you didn't do it again. So all of a sudden everything feels bad. So why does that matter? All right. So for someone, for example, benching, they missed like a bench session and all of a sudden their primary just like, whoa, everything feels hard, right? But their brain will think, man, I took an extra day off. Why does it feel bad? Well, the problem is,
The
isn't that
problem is you took a
24
day
hour window?
off.
Exactly. So the stimulus from the prior day wouldn't have carried all the way to primary. That is why you have a day in between to kind of provide another micro stimulus to kind of recover and go into the next day.
Yeah.
Right. So like I think like when people like all of a sudden miss a tertiary bench day or something and they're like, oh, my primary felt bad. I think the program's not working. You're like, whoa, Jimmy, you just took out a big part of the program.
Yeah, this is like something I tell to. So I have a guy who works in corporate. Like he's like
Hmm.
completely like. Yeah, this guy used to be one of those guys before. So he eventually like he has to go on trips and all, and he keeps skipping a few days here and there. And in between, like he was asking me that he doesn't. We were able to maintain it, which was a very creative sort of a block structure I had to create. It was very different from normal, but we were able to maintain whatever he had. And I
Hmm.
had to kind of explain this exact thing to him ki, like if you keep missing days or if you keep like shifting days is not really a thing that you should allow your clients to do if you're a coach, especially when you create a block for a reason, because it's going to mess up the entire curves. And the way that I explained it earlier, like things feeding into another, it's going to
Yeah.
affect the entire macro on the whole. Obviously
Yeah.
one day by itself is not going to affect it that significantly, but if it's a repeated thing, if it's a repeated occurrence, then yeah, it's going to fuck up whatever we're hoping to achieve.
And in these kind of situations, you'll have to use programming strategies like agile periodization, which we'll
Hmm.
get into like another day. But like, where you well, there's no choice but for this person to kind of do this thing, or I would almost say like you can mimic a stimulus. I picked it. I think I forget who it was on Instagram, but like it helped a client of mine. Like, well, somebody couldn't show up to their tertiary bench day, so the guy just did a ton of push-ups at home, right? So it kind of gives stimulus towards the
Hmm.
pecs and the triceps and the delts, right? So that stimulus still was strong enough where, well, they show up on their primary day. It's a great thing. I think two sets of 50 push-ups to failure, two sets of push-ups to
Oh yeah, I
failure.
remember. Yeah, you were talking about that.
That tertiary day just that was their tertiary day at home if they couldn't go to the gym and bench. So the
Hmm.
body just needs a stimulus. If it can't get the specific stimulus, the next best thing is it needs a stimulus, right? Like I remember one of the guys from Triumph Strength and Performance. I think it was Andy. I might be wrong. I think one of the guys would say like, yeah, before I throw in that tertiary squat day, like as a squat itself, I just gave the guy some leg extensions to get some local stimulus in the quads,
Hmm.
right? So that was sufficient enough for the guy to kind of come into this shit, right?
This is like something I saw on the same TSP coach Devin, the
Yeah,
video that you were talking about, right? The first one, uh,
yeah,
where I think he did something like an incline plated press to kind of create
yeah,
a tertiary day replica.
yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah. And
and like,
just the just the SRA curve by itself, like we did explain it like on theoretical level, but if I just want to explain it like a little bit simply, in a very simple way, okay, you have stimulus, you're going to obviously going to be fatigued from that. So like let's think this is your baseline. You get a stimulus here, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to be here, then you recover. And the whole point of what we are discussing here with adaptations today is the fact that once you recover, and if it's like imposed well, and if the next stimulus is also imposed well, there's going to be a point where you're going to be above your baseline, and that's called like
yeah.
the adaptation that we're talking about. And if you're able to train within that window, then you're going to be better and better, and this is kind of how you're going to keep improving your baseline
Yeah.
and just get stronger over time.
Yeah,
Just wanted to explain it
and
simply.
and the reality is like, well, if you don't allow for that recovery to happen and
Hmm.
you impose another stress, you'll have adaptations, but on the
But it'll keep
negative
going
end.
down. Exactly.
Right, you start to have negative adaptations. Like if your program has primary indicators, right? If your program has primary indicators like just basic things like estimated one rep max, or like if you're fancy and have velocity tracking for your like clients as well, right? The reality is if those indicators starts to go down, right, you need to kind of ask, is this stimulus something that is creating a positive adaptation, right? Is the window of like stress that I'm giving this person, like, The secondary day could be 3 by 5 at RP 5 starting and then ramped up to RP 6.5, something there, right? But you always notice that, well, at 6.5, they kind of crash, right? Do you need that, right? Right? Like, this is why we're kind of saying the fact is that the primary, okay, so now that we have an understanding of stimulus, recovery, adaptation, and involution, this is just why we view as primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, and centenary days. This is just an order of distributing stress throughout the week, right? So you'll have like there's a day we want to show up, and that shows up because of something we did prior to that. All right.
True.
I like to view the lens as the primary day as the expression day, and the secondary day as something that builds into that thing, but with a small caveat of the fact that, well, yes, the secondary day is building us into that primary day to express our strength, but the back offs and the primary day top set or whatever structure you have, right? Not everyone needs to have a top set at all points, right? That should be sufficient
That's a
enough.
separate video right there. Yeah.
Exactly, right? That should be still sufficient enough of a stimulus for the next week's secondary day, right? Because if the primary secondary structured well on week one, but you over push the primary, that primary day is the next stimulus. All right. My apologies on that. That primary day is the next stimulus that eats into the secondary days like this thing. And like Tapas mentioned earlier on, if you keep overshooting, you need to understand well, this is like taking a loan from a bank,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
You're
Good
just
analogy.
taking more and more, right? That interest rate is going to accumulate, and before you know it, you're bankrupt.
And the thing is, you're just going to be taking from your future self, which doesn't make sense
Exactly.
because you're training hard either way. If you want to go and overshoot, you're still going to be training hard. There's no point to it though. Like, it's not going to give you anything back.
This is why, like, again, this may be like many may consider this a boring strategy. I've heard like a lot of guys saying, why would you like who trains like this? Elliot Sykes trains like this. Like, from my understanding, it's like emergent strategies like static approach, right? Like, dude, you program week one in a certain way, right? It can be as simple as like a singular RP is 7 followed by 3 sets of 5 at like 75% of daily 1 hour, right? If that week of golden training is structured appropriately, that'll allow for the next week to kind of show up well. All right. And it kind of shows up well and well and well and well. Right. This stimulus is allowing for the next week. That stimulus is allowing for the next week. But this window of 1 week stimulus might taper off at like week 5 and 6. Right. So your time to peak is kind of found out. Like when are you the strongest? Like this window of stimulus gets you strong on week 4. Right. So then you have an understanding of this thing. They don't ramp up RP, they just hold it static, right? So like I just kind of think like there are reasons why these guys do it because what they think is like it's not the program that drives the growth, it's the athlete and what they
Yeah.
do outside of the gym that grows it.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. You can't ignore that as a factor as well,
Yeah.
because ultimately your energy is going to be distributed. It's going to be
Yeah.
somebody who's sleeping 12 hours a day is going to make more progress than somebody who's sleeping like
I feel like that's a personal attack on me. I feel like
uh, hey, I mean,
4 hours of sleep is more than enough for like me to
yeah,
not want to die.
ad- adult males only need 4 hours, 4.5 at
Yes,
most.
scientifically proven.
So,
No, because like I think the guys from Battalion Barbell had a great post the day we are kind of shooting this is because they talk about the fact that I think it was on JJ's story where he talks about the fact that dude, the gym is the stimulus.
huh.
Like that is the stimulus. People need to understand that crap, right? It's the stimulus is there. It is what you do after that that allows you to kind of grow, right? Like you do like I don't want to bust this kid's balls, but like I have a client of mine, like he's a nice kid, he's awesome. Guy went and cycled 47 kilometers before his primary day,
Yeah,
right?
this guy.
I love the guy. Like he's awesome. He's like, but one thing I'll give that kid is like whatever mistake he makes, he learns from it, right? And like we just have a communication saying this is not the move, right? I say this because people think what happens in the gym is in isolation. Like what happens the rest of your life, like you mentioned your client, busy corporate schedule, the whole 9 yards, right? What happens outside the externals will impact the stress because this is all stress, right?
Obviously.
Lifting is stress, not sleeping is stress, poor nutrition is stress, like stress, stress, stress. right?
And the thing is, when you have like shit externals to like, I mean, okay, you can't obviously. There's circumstances where you
Yeah,
can't adjust. In that point, at that point, you do need a programming adjustment, like I do for a lot of my. As I said, the corporate people, they have like a different program which is not really normal. But like, I just want you to understand that when what we're talking about here, if you look at it from the curve itself, the stimulus is at the gym, okay, and you might think that the gym is it, but all of the like to actually get to the point of adaptation, you need to get through this point, which is recovery, and recovery is
yeah.
primarily done outside of the gym. Whatever you do outside, yeah, that exactly, that's kind of what decides it. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you're if you're getting drunk and then going to the gym the next day.
No, I have a client of mine at a certain point, a guy named Bob, who was from the Netherlands. Guy would just get hammered and go to the gym. I know another guy. I can't mention who he
Yeah.
is, but I have another guy.
Oh.
He got hammered, went to the gym and PR'd. So like sometimes I'm like, is alcoholism the secret?
Is
But like,
it?
everything aside, like you'll see guys like Joe Borenstein. You'll see guys like Elliot Sykes. You'll see guys like Austin Perkins talk about how much are they sleeping, right? Right, because that
And it's a
that stuff
lot.
is like, yeah, because like Matt Frazier, like throwing a CrossFit name into this, guy, Matt Frazier, in my opinion, is one of the greatest like athletic humans, right? The guy said the biggest cheat code for humans is sleep. Like some days I'll get 8 hours. Like now I'm getting 8 hours of sleep. I feel like a human, dude. Before that, I feel like shit.
It's literally like it's kind of like a performance enhancer, just like the
Yeah.
natural version
Yeah.
of it.
It is the strongest performance enhancer. I
Yeah.
would like anything that increases performance and enhancer, right? Sleep is king in my opinion. Like you cannot beat that thing. And like unless again we talked about the order of operation, stimulus and adaptations has a thing in between. Unless that happens, you do not adapt. And that is a recovery. Sleep well, eat well, manage stress. That stuff is because otherwise does the program work, right? Like why do I in my sheet track sleep for guys, right? Well, like, I think it's important to track this stuff simply because I have a client of mine who said, man, my joints hurt all of a sudden, right? Oh, when I looked at his sleep, he was sleeping 5 hours to 4 hours a day, like, and prior blocks he was averaging 7 to 8, right? So like is the program not working or is he the issue?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Hey, the sleep tracking thing also, shout out to my clients who never fill their sheet in for the sleep tracking already. Adherence is important, bro. There's a reason we track all this shit. No, the amount
No,
of times I
because
ask them.
be- because like sometimes like so someone will ask me a question is like why do you track soreness?
Yeah.
All right. So, like, well, if you think about the stimulus given on a primary day, secondary day, and you come into primary, and the soreness scale is always high, right? You're always hurt. Like, you're always still like really sore at a certain area, right? You kind of have to understand that stimulus prior is too much, and you're coming here. Now, why do we want to care about that thing? Because, like, let's say, for example, someone's like really sore through their quads, like that shit just hurts them, right? What do they do in their squat as a result of that? They'll stop having more knee flexion. They'll try and sit back into their hips more and more and
They
more,
start
right?
compensating a little bit.
Yeah. So the technique starts to drift, like that video Kaushal made on this thing. Like technique will start to drift because people just do too many things and they can't recover. So I'll just say this thing, like like when you reach task failure, right? Your body will either stop the task or find an alternative movement strategy, right? So like you can't squat with your knees flexed a bit more. You'll just sit back in your hips, right? Now this is where like 3D chess, like I'd say this is like a common sense approach. Well, you're moving in a new way, right? And the stress is probably built up throughout the weeks of the block, and you're moving in a new way when you're under like let's say week 4 or 5, when you're probably under the heaviest load. Now, what's the issue there, right? You have this new technique out of necessity you are kind of showing, right? Because you're too beat up. Um, that you are there's nothing wrong with that new technique, but you are now training that new technique at the highest absolute loads you may be using in your program,
Yeah.
right? So like that kind of tells us you're doing something you've never done before at the highest level of difficulty. If someone put a gun to my head and said I have to speak Chinese, learn Chinese now, while having a gun to my head, you don't learn when things are hard. You learn when things
Yeah.
are easy and
So
comfortable, right?
eventually, like there's like a very high chance you will regress back at least like
Yeah.
in the first few heavy sequences.
Yeah,
But
because you've never used that strategy before.
yeah, exactly. This is like why I talk about. So when I talk about changes in technique, and you see a lot of people coming up and saying that, oh, I've tried to change my technique, but over time I keep like, it goes back to my older form. The thing is, you have to actively reinforce it. It's like it's the same thing as if I were to say it, like it's like the same thing as a habit of sorts. Like you spend months or years building it, you can't
Yeah,
expect to get rid of it within like a week or two.
yeah,
You need to keep reinforcing it actively, consciously, because you've made some other, like you've made a other form kind of subconscious right now, to the point where when you go heavy, you don't really, your body doesn't really want to think about things like form, or the
yeah.
only
It's
thing
just
it
trying to
wants to think about,
survive.
yeah, exactly, the only thing it wants to think about is survival, and just like making sure the weight moves so you don't get like just
Yeah.
trampled or something.
And this is where something that's like very important, I'd say, like adaptation wise, this neural coordinative adaptation of like
Hmm.
just moving better, right? You want to learn and reinforce that thing at like lower like percentage, like absolute lows, lower RPs, lower percentages, however you program your for clients. Like because if it's an easy environment, you learn it really well, right?
That's true.
Like
Absolutely.
like RP 4 to 6, let's say somewhere they're just throwing out a number like or a certain percentage, like okay, there are caveats. I'll just go to the RP aspect, right? 4 to 6. Well, you can kind of like have an environment where it's there, it's something is happening, but you get to kind of survive through that thing, right? You get to build a habit,
Hmm.
right? And then like you see, oh, it's there, right? This is why if your coach doesn't monitor your lifts on a week to week basis, right? It becomes. I don't think that's coaching. I would say
It's
I would
not very, yeah.
yeah, because the thing is like I have a kid who wants to learn how to sumo deadlift. I like the problem is if I don't tempo and slow him down, he'll kind of go back to old habits, right?
Hmm.
So like constraining him to moving slower so his brain learns it. See, when you give something like tempo work, the absolute load you can use is lower, right? You have a better chance of being movement aware when you're kind of going slow. So your brain can pick this thing up. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? You go to a good boxing coach, they never teach you how to throw fast. They teach you how to throw slow and smooth. So then you can just kind of whip that shit out, right? I think adaptation wise, like we said, strength, like hypertrophy, neurological, right? Like neural expression of strength, cardiovascular, you then movement in itself,
Hmm.
this coordinative aspect, right? So when guys don't monitor that thing, right? Like Kaushal's video is really good on this. It's like he mentions the fact that it's never like, oh, pristine technique, dog shit next week. There's just this gradual dip that you'll kind of see of this thing happening in a lot of cases. There might be situations where a guy doesn't think enough and
Hmm.
then it becomes shit. But a lot of times it'll just be this gradual shift that kind of
And
happens.
eventually you're like, oh, where did we start from and where are we now?
Exactly. Like, and the reality is like, this is why I tell my clients, like, have like a highlights of the best hits of your lifts,
Hmm.
right? Even if it's rep work, even if it's top sets, you can always refer back to that thing, right?
This is like how you see a lot of football coaches, like in the US and all. They like to watch their
Yeah.
match footage.
Yeah.
We need to do that as powerlifters.
Yeah.
Even we do need to do
Yeah.
that. Watch
Like,
whatever we've done
because it is a
before.
sport, right?
Hmm.
Like every fighter will literally sit there and watch game footage. They'll see things that they can kind of improve upon, right?
Hmm.
Because I tell people like, yes, like week one maybe to dissipate fatigue from the last block, but week one's also a chance for you to own technique. Week two is to kind of like a chance to own and reinforce what you
Hmm.
built, right? Week three is like to kind of test what you've built, and then week four is like a situation where like, is it like if the need to express it kind of comes into a certain degree, like not max all out, but you can take it to a certain intensity. You're like, but you've
Just
done that for a
test
block
out
and
how
you're
your
like,
body like holds up under that point.
exactly. So like when you're programming, the thing is like, well, the blocks, like you could be pushing deadlifts, but your squat technique is ass. So you don't want to kind of, you want to see, can you maintain like a certain environment of RP or percentage usage
Hmm.
and see if the technique holds. Then the next block, you can probably spike that technique. Like you may go, for lack of better thing, RP 5 6 6, like 4 week block 5 6 6 6. And you're like, oh, dude held it all three blocks, right? Then you're like, oh, 5 6 6 7, and technique still held. Then next block you will be like, oh, you add in a top set and see how things kind of allow for this thing. Because, like you said, as you get to that higher load, it's not about expressing; it's almost like surviving,
Survival,
right?
yeah. So you just need to make sure, like, as like Jay said, you need to make sure that after a point you've kind of reinforced it enough that your body has learnt it like learned the
Yeah.
new form or the different form to a point where under any circumstances it still reverts back to that form or
Yeah.
something relatively very close to that, instead of just doing whatever the hell. So this is like
Yeah.
why you see a lot of difference between that. Like again, if I'm going back to the point I mentioned earlier, this is also one of the reasons why you see a lot of people at the highest level, they do like 2.5 to 5 kilos under their max, like 1 to 5% below their max, and they're able to do it very well, very close to their max, and then they increase the weight like 5 to 6 kilos, like 2.5 to 5 kilos, and they're just unable to do it because they've gotten that efficient at it, even at loads which are kind of, you could say, survival level for even for them when it comes to that extent.
And they're just throwing a layer of like a thing here, because if someone does get to this point and then they're like, oh, but they've missed this thing. One thing I will say is this: your body moving about 85 to 90% is also a skill. That's like a specific skill of top and strength expression, right? Say, for example, if a guy never, okay, there are exceptions to this. I always say there are exceptions to this thing, right? Some people, you'll understand their rep work E1 RMs are like, whoa, what is this? All right? Holy crap. But when you see them get to top and strength, they probably shit the bed sometimes, or they can't
Yeah.
express it, because how the body coordinates itself, I'd say 85 to 90% of your one rep max is a bit different, because like all of a sudden, oh, this is some heavy ass absolute load. So you kind of will like coordinate differently. And that's why, like, before you throw like a hell of a ton of top sets into someone's program, you just got to see how do they
You need to
move
earn
under
the top set.
submaximal load. Yeah, right. And then the top set can be a reference point, right? It's like both of us went through Norman's point about like you can build a simple program and build complexity into it.
Yeah,
But if you have
Malcolm's
this
laser.
hyper complex, yeah, like, and if you have this hyper complex program, you're like, dude, why does this guy have like a single leg press before he does his primary bench? I don't know. It's there, but what's the reason for it?
Yeah.
Right. So like yes, like I would say like after beyond a certain level of intensity, the body moves differently. So you that is a skill in itself, and you need to have exposure to that, right? So you can learn the skill at a base level of submaximal loads. Then you can introduce like a top set and see how do they behave. It doesn't have to be singles, it can be triples, it can be doubles, hell, it can be even fours, right? Right? Or it can be the same set at a higher intensity to see how they hold, right? This is just a logic. I have a think like again, my boxing coach used to say sparring is earned. I would
Yeah.
say top sets are earned. I would say that for a lot of people,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense. Especially like even with people who come in for the first time, and especially
Yeah.
beginners as well. So you see these dudes who are beginners and they're kind of like, I know a guy who I met recently. He's kind of a beginner. I won't really take his name, but um, he's kind of scared of absolute loads to the point where you can't really have him do a top set in his first block because he's not even like, it's not even, he just won't be able to express even if he has
Yeah.
it, just because of
Does he
like how
even
much he
need
gets in
it?
his mind. Yeah, that's what it does. Even he doesn't really need it. So like instead of that, having something like, you could have fatigued, or you could even have sets of multiple. Like people don't really think about this. Like a lot of people here, you see, they limit their minds to triples. Like, okay, you have a 2 reps and 3 rep top sets. You can have sets like that. You could even do something like a set of 5 or 6, like you started with
Yeah.
Sune, right? And
Yeah.
the thing is, at that point, he will be able to, obviously the absolute load will be lower than what he might be
Yeah.
scared of. And
Yeah.
even with that, at the end of the block, you could still kind of get like an estimate of
Yeah.
his 1 rep max, and
Yeah.
it works out for everybody.
Yeah.
And from then on, you can kind of understand. So this is like why I support your point of saying, you kind of need to earn your top sets. You
Yeah.
need, that's also a skill. And this is also like on a side note, everything that we talked about here, this is also one of the reasons why thinking that adaptation is binary is like a very
Yeah.
major issue. You shouldn't
Yeah.
think that.
Yeah, this is why, like, again, like, no share on any guys. Like, I've had, like, I'll say this because I've had, like, seven dudes ask me this thing, right? Oh, I have this program for squat and it's going well, but I need help with these other two lifts. And, like, guys, if you're seeing this thing, there are, like, seven of y'all who have asked me this thing. And I'll just say this thing. It's like, see, when you have, like, I'll give someone a very like when you have like when you don't squat, deadlift or bench, you have less stress and like in the system, so you have more bandwidth for squatting. But if you have that same squat program and you throw in deadlifts and benching, you kind of have to understand that the overall training dose just changed. So oh shit, everything becomes like I have a female client of mine where like she had a little hip shift issue because like again I thought pause squats would kind of reinforce certain positions, but it kind of dragged her away into that hip shifty kind of situation, right? So if you are like pause squats and the next day you have some tempo deadlifts thing, the pause is not as demanding as like a tempo squat, right?
Hmm.
So like, well, when you switch from pause work to tempo work, the deadlift, the secondary the next day, that's gonna get cooked. That's gonna have an impact. Maybe it might even help it. Sometimes it may prime the legs. But in her situation, all the change we made was in her block to block was change her secondary from a pause work to a tempo work. And that tempo thing kind of beat her up enough where the secondary deadlift day that came next, that was like not feasible for her. Right? Those numbers dipped from the previous block. Right. So I tell people this thing is like, don't think of stimulus from an exercise in isolation.
Hmm.
Right? Dude, you know how easy it would be for us to run small off bench if we didn't have like squatting and deadlifting, right? But if you have squatting and deadlifting and you're running small off bench on top of that thing, God pray that you have enough window for recovery,
That's
right?
true.
And you
Yeah.
have smart enough accessories to offset all of that shit, right?
And yeah, I like this is like a thing related to this. I saw Will Ball does like 7 days a week now. Like yesterday,
Yeah,
yeah, he's doing like
yeah,
multiple bench days, right? So this is kind of what we're talking about. Like God help you with the recovery because
yeah. And you'll see smart things like when you see like some like Joe Stanek program for like Austin Perkins, and you'll see the guy. I don't know how much he squats, like 350 kilos, something like that.
yeah,
Like I don't know, like
close to that
three
probably.
thirty, something like that. Yeah, right. And you'll see some days the guy just comes into the gym and is squatting 175 to 200, like
Hmm.
maybe 200 to 210. Like, dude, they figured out his stress, the total stress he can handle, and like they've distributed it out well enough. I forgive me if I am misquoting Joe Stanek on this thing, but they've kind of work around some things on tonnage. They kind of work like Agatha's coach mentioned the same thing. Like all that stress that's comprised maybe into 4 days gets spread into like
Spread into 6
7 days,
days. Yeah.
right? Yeah. And then they see, man, how does this go? Right? And then they can tweak days like I know for a fact because I did the TSG course at one point, right? Again, I could be misquoting the guy because I remember Leah Bivo had like a very aggressive bench program, right? It was like super aggressive, but the data kind of allowed them to kind of do that. But if you give that same thing to someone like Will Ball, he'll probably die, right? If you give that to someone like because the athlete profile will change, right? Like athletes like heavier like like lighter weight women's benching, right? Why can they handle more high top and frequency and like more peak end exposure? Because the absolute load they're using is a lot less, right? So like they can get away. But once you start benching super heavy, like if I gave you like like heavy singles like 8 to 9 on a day-to-day basis, you die, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or we'd have to restructure the entirety of the
Entire
other thing
thing.
to kind of
Yeah.
do this. Yeah. Right. So like never like the guys are asking, can you just program this and this for me? I'm like, dog, there is this other thing that we have to consider because the whole thing is a net stimulus.
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah.
much it. I remember like
Yeah.
him talking about like you remember I was asking you about how it can be different for a woman, and you were
Mm.
like they can handle way more on bench
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of intensity, especially. So yeah, you need to take these factors into consideration. Don't think adaptation is binary, and
Yeah.
don't like don't think of sequencing adaptation. Sorry, don't think of like um, so you
This
see a lot
block,
of
this
people.
adaptation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You don't smash them all together simultaneously. Yeah, that's basically if I were to like say what I was thinking. Is like in if I were to say what I was thinking simply, don't smash everything together. Okay, don't add fucking
Yeah.
like I've seen this randomly. I don't know if this was like I think this was Willie P Lips. He made like a post yesterday. I think it was on people who were using AI for their programming, and I've
Yeah.
like seen this in multiple programs of dudes that came to me and like they're with me now in their previous programs. You have a top set followed by a tempo followed by a paused variation, and this was on multiple days. Like shit like this, shit like this. You're like, why? Like if you have something like this in your program, just it could be for a reason. Obviously, your coach could be thinking. So ask them why it is there, because
Because it could work. Like, but that program never started off like that, probably.
that's what.
Right? Adjustments to those things probably could lead to that.
Hmm.
But like if that's what you're going off for like the get-go, you're like, what happened? What is not working in this like peanut butter jelly spaghetti ice cream sandwich, right?
Yeah, it's like why? Like I don't know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like starting off with that doesn't really make too much sense. and basically don't like smash all of the adaptations together. Like, don't program in that sense, try to sequence them. This is also kind of why we talk about block periodization, having
Yeah.
certain goals for certain macros moving forward through like this.
Yeah.
This is also why we have separate blocks for peaking and expressing strength. They're not the
Yeah.
same as kind of what
Yeah.
we used to build, because those,
Yeah.
that's a completely different style of training and different, like this. It's just the goals are completely different with that sort of a block. We're just training to
And
bring the fitness up, the fatigue
yeah.
down. But in
Yeah.
sort of in a volume block, in a hypertrophy, we don't really care as much for expression to be at the highest level, because we don't need to compete immediately. So we kind of have like a little bit of a gap between fitness and fatigue.
And then you'll have like, you have the strategy of training into a meet, right? You can just like,
Yeah.
there's no like traditional peak and taper. There's like, you're just training into the meet where you're aligning your final week into that meet kind of a structure, right? And I want to kind of throw this up if time allows, right? I like the thing about accessory selection, right? We talked about like adaptations being like strength and hypertrophy based, but movement quality and movement restoration is also like very important
Yeah.
for us, right? So, for example, benching, like you're someone that benches like with a very high arch and you have like your ribs like super extended kind of
Completely flared.
situation,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna have like a lot of like maybe if you kind of want to be just too stuck in that extension kind of a situation, right? Because like too much extension being stuck there, like your deadlift, for example, requires thoracic like that element of flexion, that neutrality, right? So like if you have accessories like a feet up dumbbell bench press where you're not arched, your chest is kind of like caved in, you're pressing with a reach, right? Because pressing is pressing for the pec muscles, right? But what I would say is like if everything requires that deep and stretch, you're gonna kind of reuse a ton of a similar movement strategy.
Something like to reverse is something like something with scapular protraction as well. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
that could
Yeah.
also help.
Yeah, like you want to get like if all you do is this like depressing the scaps and you need to understand if you kind of this is why bodybuilders or like powerlifters end up very stiff because they are consistently like programmed without any like rotational work or anything regarding the rib cage moving or the pelvis moving or things like that. So inherently they take that shape because the stimulus given is kind of like brace and hold and press, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so like you want your accessories to largely also like we said, accessories can be to replicate a lift, it can be to build muscles, or it can be to maintain. Like it can be to mimic an exercise, or most importantly, it can be to like maintain health in the general system, right? If you just like I would really like I've gotten guys where when you look at their accessory list, you're like, dude, this guy is not surviving this. They're probably throwing up by the end, and you're like, do they need it? Right?
Yeah.
Why do we give like without like it's a fact, right? I've gotten
Yeah.
someone where they showed me their accessory lifts, and I was like dog, you can't survive this, right? And like, why do we have unilateral work, right? Why do we want to kind of build like the individuality in the pelvis? Why do we want to create like contralateral like exposure for like a lifter? Why do we want to have reaching in somebody's like bench, right? Like dumbbell work or like machine press work. It's so that the muscles can get the stimulus, but they use a different tissue strategy, right? Like for example, someone who's so heavily externally rotated into like sumo, right? They just feel a ton of ER. Well, they probably won't be the best at hinging, like because
Yeah.
hinging is a very IR dominant strategy, right? This is why you'll see like some guys like who are sumo deadlifters have like a secondary day or like a tertiary exposure or something of like a pure hinge, like
Yeah.
something like an RDL or a stiff leg or a conventional day in itself, right? Sean Norega did this for like Aaron recently, right? Like he on the post that he mentioned. So like your lifts have to kind of think about like not building muscle and strength all the time. It's also about maintaining general health so you can build muscle and kind of this thing.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Uh, do you think our time is up?
Probably we're probably gonna get like cancelled by the next episode. So like this is probably like, but
Yeah.
you know like
If anybody wants to send us like a free combo rack.
like if you got this far like DM me and I'll give you a pizza, dude. Like wherever
Yeah.
you're in, the first five guys to DM me gets a pizza.
Because I don't think anybody's. If you're actually watching till this point, probably Sune is going to be watching this, like the only one. Sune, shout out to you. He's going to be watching this on his television.
pizza on me. Like no, even like Sunay's case, right? That
Yeah.
shoulder blades behavior, right? It's very evident from like because benching has a lot of scap depression, low barring has a lot of scap depression. If you have limitations of rotation at the shoulders, that shit's gonna show up somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Usually it's at the elbows, right? Because the arm can't, because the scapula behaves a certain way because of the rib cage. It just can't deliver the arm the way the other one wants to. And you can see it in Sunay's bench when it's recorded from the front. Like I have another client of mine, she had a similar issue with her like hip. It's it's the thing is we want to kind of think about keeping someone healthy for long enough,
True.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense. With Sune, like I remember he had the issue on his elbow was like for from a while as well. The bench was also uneven. That
Yeah.
eventually that kind of issued, and then like his knee, though we already spoke about.
It's like the bench, the arm delivers the barbell, right? If they are, there are some limitations in this foundation, so the rib
Yeah,
cage is gonna show up, right?
yeah,
Not every accessory is hypertrophy maxing. It's also kind of to build some variable health in someone,
100%, 100%.
right?
So if I were to go over what we spoke about,
Yeah,
we talked about adaptations, what they are, kind of like spoke about the SRA curve, what it is, used a lot of examples and all. We talked a lot about accessories, didn't we? Like
yeah,
unplanned. Like basically, they're not just for hypertrophy. We spoke about a lot of different things about like why we program them, why they're programmed differently, why adaptations shouldn't be thought of as binary. Why you shouldn't
yeah,
smash all of them together in a single block.
yeah.
And yeah, and we damn bro, we actually spoke a lot about accessories.
Yeah. Sustainable programming.
Yeah. I thought like we'll have like a little section for block periodization, just explaining structure by structure, but it's already been an
Yeah,
hour. Yeah, that's
yeah,
not happening today. But the topic on top sets, I think that would kind of be interesting to make
yeah.
another one on that, like how
Yeah.
earning the top sets actually works, and then like another one on periodization.
How would you want to progress it? All
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Does it have to progress aggressively? Does the athlete need it? Does the data support it? All these kind of things, right?
absolutely, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, we also spoke about like I just clarified neural adaptations because I've seen that
Yeah.
whenever I post like a Q&A or something like that, I've got like fucking 15 people asking me, "Oh, can you like explain neural adaptations?" I even made a video on it. I don't know why people are confused specifically on this. Maybe maybe like physically it's easier to understand. Okay, the muscle adapts. It like becomes bigger, better at using it. But neural adaptations seem to be like a confusing point. So if you saw the video, you probably understand it now.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can like I
Yep.
don't know, hit up any ideas or shit in the comments or whatever.
Yes. If you want to send us your like, or I can't say that. Last time I said something like this, I got banned by Instagram. Jesus.
If you want to send us money, then like
Dude, that's what I got banned. I said send me your bank details and your like credit card info, and they banned
see
me.
see that's different. You were directly asking for it. I'm just asking for money.
Money, yeah.
But yeah. So if anybody wants to sponsor us, send us money. You just DMJ, and we'll figure it
I
out.
mean, what do I do? What do I do?
We'll figure it out. All right.
Perfect, man. Thank you guys. Like, whoever stayed this long, if anyone stayed this long,
Yeah.
thank you guys. We will be bringing on
Might be
like
speaking to an
actual,
empty
like,
room.
dude, we'll be like the voices in our head. It's just you, me, and like the wind.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, if anybody actually stuck till now, actually like W
Thank you
attention
guys.
span. Yeah, thank you. Hope you found it valuable. If you have any ideas, any feedback, we're always open to it. And you can DM, comment,
Always there.
whatever.
Perfect,
And
man.
yeah,
That's fun episode 1, dude. Peace,
that's fun
guys.
episode 1. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I
Mwah.
forgot to press record.
That's how I
Oh.
jump off the building.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah, we'll see you. Bye.
See you guys. Peace.